Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 44th episode of By the Drip. This podcast dives into coffee, entrepreneurship, and the inspiring people we meet through the world of coffee. Today, we're joined by Max Boulet, co-founder of Sovda and one of the most exciting companies developing roasting technology in specialty coffee today. Max shares his journey from discovering coffee while living in China to launching Sovda through a successful crowdfunding campaign for their first product, the Pearl. In this episode, we explore the intersection of coffee and innovation, the evolution of color sorting technology, and how Sovda is helping improve quality and workflow for roasters around the world. Max also opens up about the challenges of breaking into the industry, navigating tariffs, scaling globally, and what it means to mature as a company while staying focused on solving real problems. So please enjoy our conversation with Max. Max, thanks for joining me. Excited to talk to you about Sovda. I want to go back to the very beginning. How does someone like you end up designing machines for coffee roasteries? Take us through that arc, that journey. I want to hear it all, buddy.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. So the journey of Sovda. Full disclaimer: I'm not the one designing the machine. Sovda has someone else doing this, Samuel, who is the founder. But my journey, how did I got into Sovda? So it started, probably we can put a start in 2017. So in 2017, I'm in China. I'm in Beijing. I'm spending my time doing two things very intensely. I'm learning Chinese. Takes a lot of time.
Yeah, that's hard.
And I'm rock climbing. So I went to China during a trip, doing rock climbing in the Yosemite of China. It's a city called Yangshuo. It's fantastic. And then after some months, I came to the conclusion I would need to make some money. And this is me being in China, learning Chinese, and applying for a job out of a coffee shop in front of the school. So you see a bit where this is going. I see people cupping coffee, being super excited about beans that they grab from other roasters. And until now, I've never really been into coffee. I started very late, 23 or 24, and really as an obligation. Like, I remember my dad telling me, you need to drink coffee. This is where all the important decisions are being made at the coffee machine. Okay, cool. So started coffee super late and for a very different reason than the taste. And so here I am at this school, spending all my morning, and at this coffee shop, spending most of my afternoon, seeing these people being excited about coffee, applying to jobs where the Chinese job market become more and more competitive. They don't really need a foreigner to tell them what to do and how to do it. We don't speak Chinese. So I quickly realized I won't find a job. So then I need to find a way to make money, to have a project. And I'm thinking, well, maybe I can sell coffee. And so I am, I really know nothing about coffee. So what I was thinking is, do they grow coffee in China? Yes, they do. Where? In Yunnan. So Yunnan is also a fantastic place for rock climbing. So I go there for a rock climbing trip, and on the way back, I visit this city called Pu'er,
Okay.
which is the main city for coffee production and the region around it. And there you had back then 3 companies who were run all by American and who were either bringing education, so they were Q-Grader lab, or they were SCA certified lab, or they were doing some import and export. And I visited the 3. I asked if I can buy coffee and have a price for wholesale. And then I would sell it in Beijing to a climbing gym because that's my other passion. It's very logical.
Right. Okay.
So I go there. One of the company give me a wholesale price. I think they're amused by the situation, and I feel mission accomplished. So I bring my 10 kilo of coffee in my luggage, and then they will ship it to me later on. That's great. And so I start to grind coffee at the coffee shop. I have to negotiate to get access to the grinder. So I end up buying a grinder. I end up breaking grinder because it's a very cheap one. Do it in my kitchen. And I take this big bag of coffee, put it in small bag of coffee, do some label, and then first I sell it to my friends who are also amused by it. But yeah, coffee and rock climbing is a real thing. So people buy a bit of coffee. Climbing gym, they buy once coffee. The brilliant idea was to have the coffee directly shipped from origin, where they also roast it, to a place where people will consume it, because climbers go every week or multiple times per week. So I was thinking that's so convenient. And we had some success story in France of startup who did this and raised millions of dollars and were a bit more organized, but more with vegetable or meat, so very short value chain. I used to work in the field of international development. So this whole thing of connecting farmer with the point of consumption, to me, it was so brilliant. But it wasn't. So yeah, I didn't sell a lot of them. People were asking me a lot of questions about coffee and what was my, why I was credible in it. And the truth is I wasn't. So I remember I would just watch everything on YouTube, read book, try to give them some kind of cool answer. And I knew, but then it started to be painful that I really knew nothing. So after doing a month of that, I thought, okay, I need to go and live in this Pu'er, in this city where they produce coffee, and I need to learn about it. And actually, I had a revelation that I would work in coffee for next 10 years.
Wow.
I had this. You should imagine this person who is learning Chinese in the morning, rock climbing, and selling coffee. That was my 3 obsession. And I was like, yeah, I need a plan, and the plan is going to be coffee. And I was very excited about it because I study business. I have a master in business. I had a specialization in entrepreneurship, the broadest thing. And before this, I was living in a country called Cambodia for 3 years, where I did different things, but for half of the time I was working with farmer or NGO or social company, working with farmer to find ways to help them make more money. And I was mainly working with 2 crops. One was rice and one was melon. And I was always very frustrated that there's no way to have a conversation with anyone, basically, except your 5 colleagues in the organization about melon or rice. So when you go back to your home country or you travel, it's very hard to share what you do and be excited about it. And I thought with coffee, I won't have this problem.
Everyone's into coffee.
Exactly. And you at the time, yeah, so I started to work in coffee with the producing aspect of it. And I was, in the future, if you want to go back, it's okay. You can go back to France and talk about coffee with people. There is even an industry there, turns out. So it seems like a really solid plan. So that's the beginning. So then I go back to Pu'er. I ask the same three company run by American who wants to pay me a little bit in exchange of I would write articles about coffee and sustainability, because I've decided as someone who used to work in this field in Cambodia, more the sustainable aspect of production and certification and whatnot, I was credible. So a company, not the same one who sold me the coffee initially, was interested in this. And so there I am. I moved. So I leave Beijing. I go to Pu'er. And the deal initially was to stay 3 months there. I would take as many SCA certification as I want, learn as many things as I want, and I would produce some article on this topic. And that was how I got started really into
Wow.
coffee.
Wow. How is your Chinese?
So learning Chinese, when I was there, I was living in a city, Pu'er, of 200,000 people, and there were 25 foreigners.
Okay.
And so my Chinese was okay because I didn't have a choice.
You were forced.
Right. And I thought it would be the only way also. In Beijing, it was very difficult to learn it. So basically, my first months in Pu'er, I was working in a processing center. So the company I joined there was called Torch Coffee. And Torch Coffee at the time was a training center, a processing center. So they would process coffee. They were among the pioneers of doing natural and honey processed coffee in Yunnan. And it was also a newly established roastery. So the first months I would spend it drying coffee for natural and honey processed. We would have this program, Torch. It was a program called Mountain Man, and basically they would invite roaster or barista from all over China, even from all over the world, but it wouldn't be a lot of foreigners, to come during the season of harvest to process coffee. So I would be with 15 Chinese part of this program who would be already in the industry. And then there would be regular farmer who were farmer before being coffee experts, so they wouldn't have tasted the coffee, etc. And then there would be me drying this coffee while listening to Chinese podcast. 5-6 hours a day. So I would do this. It was a very monk mode approach. And then in the evening, it would be more related to coffee. So I would be with people who knew coffee and we would taste it. But mainly...
And when you're processing this coffee, is Torch teaching you how to process this? Like the coffee, and there's like a standard, or did you create those?
I was really, you need really to think of me as a laborer who doesn't communicate Chinese very well,
Okay.
and who can lift bags. And so,
Okay.
But where I started so there would be standard. They had done it the year before. We would take a lot of measurement multiple times per day, and everything would be sent in a big WeChat group, and then there would be people who know what they do who would be analyzing this. So it was a lot of communication by taking all the data basically every day, and then there would be some change that would be instructed to us basically. So at this time, I'm just following instruction. One of the things that was there was a cherry sorter. so a color sorter to sort cherry. And this is where I could start to learn a bit more and start to have some sense of agency around what I was doing, because I was in contact with the supplier who did this machine and started to understand more and more how the machine worked and the limitation, and that was something no one was really into. So that became a bit my niche in this processing center.
Maybe explain for people listening or watching
Yeah,
what would actually be happening to the cherries as they're coming in.
sure. So the center was buying cherries from different producer all around. Some of these producer would have already sold cherry in the past, and so they can understand what is expected in terms of quality. And here, really, by quality, we mainly mean ripeness and color, really. And some would be more new to selling cherry to us, and or some would be not so new, but still not necessarily following, either because of the picker they were using or because it was just bad timing to actually harvest it, but they still want to harvest a bit more than what's ripe. So there are different factors which makes you end up with cherry of very, very different color. And this means a different variation of red, but also a lot of green cherry. So then you have two options. And in this center, I have never experienced the sorting by hand. When I came, there was already a sorter. So then we would need to make sure the cherry are ready to be sorted, which means already relatively cleaned, not too wet. And then we would convey them to this cherry sorter, and we would eject the green one for sure, and then depending on what we were comfortable with, the one who were not fully red. And this is something that we would do systematically, and this was in 2018. And in China back then, there was already one other location doing a cherry sorter. Now there are, at least that I know of, 3 or 4. But I realized afterwards that it's still something relatively uncommon, actually, if you look at all the other origin. So for me, it was my first experience with coffee, with processing, and it was just normal. I almost didn't realize that we were using technology, and that was a bit special.
And the cherries were falling in, and then is it taking photographs and just based on the color of the cherry, it's sorting it, allowing it go through, and if it's too green, spits it out the other side, so it doesn't go into the batch.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the exact same concept as a color sorter for roasted or green coffee. The only difference, and then I will explain how it works, but the difference is that here handling the cherry is already a challenge, because coffee beans, green or roasted, is relatively hard, and it's not moist or completely wet, actually, like the cherry. So here to convey them, it's already a first technical challenge. And then you would convey them with a belt that is, it's a belt, it's horizontal versus the chute that we use for the color sorter for roasted. And then the big challenge is, so then this cherry will go into a sorting chamber, which has a light that is very, very much controlled. So that is also a challenge. You want to have a constant electrical supply. because if there are peaks, your light will change and the camera will not see the same red. So that's another challenge. And then the cherry will arrive at along a line that is imaginary, but this is where the two camera will look at. And then they would take basically picture very, very fast of the cherry. And then you have ejectors. So first there's the picture, then it recognizes whether the color is within the spectrum that you have indicated. If it is, nothing happens. If it is not, the computer, so to say, will send the signal to the ejector. And the ejector will then splash a puff of air, and then your cherry will be out. And then you want this air to be delivered at the right time. So you need to calibrate this too. And not for too long, so it doesn't eject two cherries, and not for too short, so it has the strength to eject at least one. And then the big challenge we had was that these cherry are very, even if you clean them, they still have a lot of dirt and moisture on them. So then the trick is really to prepare them very well before they go into the sorting machine. Otherwise, your screen is very dirty, the camera can't see, and then it's not really color sorting anymore. Then it's very random what come out of the sorter. So this
Do you
was.
see much of this technology at farms these days, like through?
So I don't have. So actually, if we go back a bit, so this machine was the first prototype of Sovda. So the idea at the time, and that was really before me joining. At that time, I was a laborer learning Chinese in a greenhouse. But the initial idea for Sovda was to help producer by bringing technology. So this cherry sorter was the first iteration. There were also other equipment, maceration tank and whatnot. So that was the initial idea. Sovda would be a company helping producer, and the lab for it was this processing center where I was working in. And I was not even aware of that at the beginning. I was just there for a very different reason. But that was the initial idea of Sovda. And then a lot of challenge with this cherry sorter, and this is maybe why we don't see so many. I mean, just where I was, there were a few, but then I have talked to several producers in several locations, and it's not that common. So you see it in very, very sophisticated form. In Brazil, you would see probably more than anywhere. And it's still not that many. And the reason is it's relatively pricey. And the machine itself is pricey, but also to set up a company around this, you need each time to go there, the farm will be remote for the commissioning. You have all this technical challenge, so you need other device, or you can sell it as a product, but just to prepare the cherry. So you need people who are either technical themselves and ready to manufacture some other machine just to prepare the cherry, or you need to sell a full installation, which ends up being very costly. Then you have the challenge of electrical supply that need to be constant, or you need to have some device which can also be costly to have constant electrical supply. So for all those reasons, actually, Sovda didn't push forward. So this is when I get involved. So I get involved after this realization slash product market fit. So we were still willing to push this project forward. So it was something we would talk about when people would ask us, hey, I saw on your Instagram that you are doing this, are you? And the first years we were saying yes to anything. So of course we can try to make it happen. But the truth is we never sold any. Then if you really want to create the environment so this cherry sorter works, you need to have all those things figured out. And yeah, this has a high cost. So for us, it was not really possible to start a company by doing only this. So yeah, this brings us to the beginning of Sovda as we know it now.
And so how hard was that transition saying, okay, we got this product, this great product, but it's not going to fit well, with the group that may or may not want it. And then how do you make that transition to, okay, let's go into sorting roasted coffee, let's go into sorting green coffee, and then expand, into the roasting space more so than at the farm level?
Yeah, so I think, and the transition was easy because the mission was how to help producer to have better quality by using technology. And then we realized that it wouldn't be by trying too hard to bring a technology that at the time, now I think it is changing, but technology that people couldn't afford, basically. We transitioned to how to look further down in the value chain for a market who might actually be ready for it. And by sorting the green or the roasted, you can still indirectly help those producers. So the transition wasn't 180-degree turn. It was more, okay, we want to have an impact. If we spend all our effort to convince one producer to adopt our technology, it might make more sense to try to convince 100 roasters and have more impact down the line. And then how do we start this movement? So we are around beginning of 2018. And I don't exactly know how, but one of the barista slash foreigner who were following all the SCA course knew that Onyx Coffee was looking for a color sorter for their future roasteries for the expansion, the one we know now in Rogers. So at that time, the color sorter from Sovda was already in use for 8 months at the roastery at Torch. So they had already a prototype where they had already sort dozens of tons of coffee. So we were confident it was commercially ready. We hear that Onyx is looking for a color sorter. We were already working towards doing a crowdfunding campaign. And so it doesn't really change what we were doing, but it gives you confirmation of what you're doing. So we started this campaign. I remember we did it on Indiegogo. We were not even sure people could buy equipment that cost so much money on a crowdfunding campaign. And I remember we would be talking with the other people from the team and Torch about our idea, which is, of course, if we do a product launch on a crowdfunding platform, we will not give people a cupping spoon or a pencil. We are here to sell the machine. And so I remember I would check the maximum limit, and that's why we didn't choose Kickstarter. But Indiegogo didn't have a maximum. And so we did this campaign very low key, low budget, low everything, introducing our Sovda Pearl Mini. We already know that there is one roaster in the world, at least, who
You got one
is
customer
for this kind of things, and we hope to find some more. And so we paused the campaign, and crowdfunding campaign can really be a science. For sure, the way we did it was not a science. We had a date and we wanted to respect the deadline. So we did all what we could before, which was a 5-minute video and the equivalent of an A4 page text introducing the company. And we had a website where people can click. And one morning, we see that someone has bought all the lineup.
Oh, wow.
And so we, in our mind, we are like, wow, this is going to be so easy. This person has not even asked us a single question. I remember it was $44,000 at the time. And there were various things, but that was a full lineup. And we thought, wow, that's fantastic. We are in China, in a small village. We're doing this campaign really is the worst editing video. We can put a link, it's still on YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
And there is someone in the Netherlands, and we looked at the website, it looked legit. Dutch Barista is the company name. We bought all our stuff. So that was the beginning of Sovda.
How many did you sell through the startup, like the funding?
Mm-hmm. So we sold 2, and one was to Onyx,
Okay.
which was still, for sure, I think it still helped. It looks much more real, actually, to have it through this Kickstarter. And I think also there is really a audience of people, I am part of it, who like to go on crowdfunding platform and look at what's new. And they know they will receive 10 notification for why there is a delay. But they want to be part of the journey. And
Right.
so, and I think Onyx is definitely a company like this. Bjorn, with the owner of Dutch Barista as well. So I think really finding your audience and knowing how to talk to them is very important. And so it's very different to write in an email that you are new and you have this exciting project and to share it, or to have a dedicated platform where people are actually striving and looking for those kind of things. And then there are the people who took the risk, who believed in you early, who helped you really to survive in the first months. And I think they also take some pride out of it. So I think that was a very smart move to start on those platforms and to understand, depending where the company is at, how to communicate to different audience, because it's something quite different to to do a Kickstarter 10 years later, it has much less authenticity. It looks very much of a stretch, but for us it was very real. So only these two, yeah.
Did you hit the deadline, the production deadline that you set?
Well, we built a good amount of buffer, and I remember when I installed the equipment at Dutch Barista, it became someone very close. Also geographically, I moved back to Europe almost next to where he lives. And he told me, well, when I bought this thing, I told myself you would be delayed by at least a year.
Oh, wow.
And we were, I think, delayed by like a couple of months.
Okay.
So something very reasonable.
On time.
Right.
So that's your first product, so the Pearl. And at the
Right.
start, was it only focused on roasted coffee or green, or was it doing both?
So at first we were already able to do both. We were marketing it much more for the roasted coffee aspect of it, but it was already able to do both. So if we look back then, I was very new to coffee, even more new to color sorter. I studied business. I have worked in this development field, and before that, I have done some other job in a consulting company in India to help business to start or expand their activity in India. So what I knew a little bit how to do was market study. So I was looking at this roasted coffee bean market, and I understood, and everyone in the coffee know it, but to me it was very new, that a lot of the commercial roaster have been doing it for decades, literally. So by commercial roaster, the Lavazza, the Lilly, the very big one. I understood it is very, very used in other crop, even for the not so large scale. So in coffee, it was really a niche in the sense it was a bit a blip, a glitch that nobody was color sorting among the specialty coffee roaster. But it was very widespread for other crop and in commercial coffee. Back then, there was almost no literature about color sorting roasted coffee, except counterculture. So all the literature was there. And I found in total less than 10 roasteries who were color sorting in the world. And back then, everyone doing it was kind of talking about it. So even if I missed 50%, it was perhaps 20 specialty coffee roastery doing it. So it was very new.
We saw it through counterculture, and we were just shocked that this technology wasn't everywhere. It kind of doesn't make sense that it's not part of just an average roastery of like sorting out. Right. So maybe we got a lot of baristas that listen and roasters, and then also just home, consumers. What are the benefits of sorting? Maybe you can say the benefits of sorting green coffee, and what are the benefits of sorting roasted coffee? Because I think we've heard whispers, we sort green and roasted, and some people are saying, if you buy high quality green, you don't need to sort, and you shouldn't buy coffee that has Quakers. You don't need to sort it if it's high quality coffee, which, newsflash, all coffee has, non-perfect beans in it. It has defects, and systematically removes it. And that's why we see the benefit. But yeah, if you can give us a list of why should roasteries buy the Pearl? This is your sales pitch. I'm leading you right into the sales pitch here.
Well, usually we're trying to force it into the people's head, but here it feels almost artificial. I'm kidding.
Use
But
my
yeah,
discount code Dave10 at checkout to save 10% on your Sovda.
that's very Tim Ferriss of you. Okay. Yeah, I think if we focus on the roasted coffee sorting, and then I can talk a bit about the green. And there are a few reasons why you would want to color sort the coffee. And if you are a roastery, at the beginning, it was interesting because the people who were buying the color sorter, they were usually owners who were also roaster or used to be the roaster. And I think back then, the color sorting of roasted coffee was really something that they would do for themselves. And by that, I mean they knew that most of their clients might not be able to taste the difference in most of their coffee. Because if we look at a typical roastery, they have perhaps 10 or 20 or 30 different type of coffees. And the color sorter, you need to remember it was developed in Pu'er by Torch, who was mainly focusing on doing natural and honey processed as a roastery, but also before that with their processing center. So back then, the idea was really to see all the effort we were doing in processing those coffees, and yet there were still Quakers once we have roasted them. And so usually you would find more Quakers in natural. One of the reasons is the way they are being processed. By processed, the way you extract the green bean out of the cherries. If you do a washed, you would use a lot of water, which includes going through the water channel, which means basically you check the density of your cherry. And depending on this density, you can, with more or less success, catch the Quakers. With natural, at least the way we were doing it and how it's usually done, you don't have this step. So you would end up with a lot more Quaker just because they are so hard to catch beforehand. Quaker is yellow for the people who don't know. So before you roast it, it might be slightly more pale, but it's still hard to distinguish it. After you roast it, the bean is brown and the Quaker is yellow. So for a color sorter, it's very, very easy to take out. And so what does this Quaker do that we want to reject them? So basically, there are beans who didn't have enough nutriment, and at the end, we don't caramelize. And that's why they don't turn brown. And in most of the case, they will have a taste of peanut, which you don't want to have in your coffee. And so if you have a bag of coffee and you see some coffee beans who are pale, yellow, sorry, you can, if you collect many of them, so if you buy from Rosso coffee roasters, you won't be able to. But if you buy from people who don't use a color sorter, the most obvious is just to brew a cup just with them. If you just find one or two, you can just crush them and you can smell directly. And even if your palate or your nose is not very developed, if you do the same thing with a regular bean, you would smell something very different. And so that's the reason we want to eject those Quakers. So that's the pure sensorial reason. But then, now that we have been selling and seeing roasters using color sorter for years, we realize also that it can also be seen as quality insurance tool. So we also see a lot of roasters who use the color sorter in the way they will source the coffee. And so we find some roasters they love to sort Quakers and they understand the benefit and the quality it brings. But they also want to find ways to get the money back and justify this investment. And this is where it can become a bit tricky in the industry of specialty coffee to talk about it, because they would use a tool in the roastery to improve the score, let's say, of coffee. And so I say it can be tricky because then the big idea of specialty coffee is that everyone in the chain has a responsibility and should do his best. So here, if you stretch this concept, and there are some critics around this, you can imagine that the roaster ends up to compensate for the producer before with cutting corners. And here I quote, because these are things I have heard recently by people using color sorter, but who were really not feeling proud about it. They were feeling they have to do it because the producer, quote unquote, don't work hard anymore. And this, I think, is a big stretch. I think the color sorter should be seen more as a tool. And in the vast majority of the case, I think everyone in the chain is trying their best. And with the equipment and skills that they have. And here it just makes so much more sense to take a defect that is very obvious and easy to see after you roast it. For a roaster, also most likely, surprise, will have more financial capacity than a producer. So it become interesting because in the sourcing strategy, people can also take more risk, perhaps, with a new producer. They can also use it as a tool to show what the coffee could look like if it was sorted. So maybe, and this we have seen it. This year, if I buy you coffee, I would need to sort 20% to sell it. I won't do it, but we know this coffee is good. So perhaps on the next year, if you continue to improve, then it would be a very good coffee for us, and it's something to strive for you. So we can see it there. We can also see with roaster, we want to continue to work with producer year after years, and this can sound very big picture and not tangible, the climate change and those kind of events. But since I started to now, we see this as something that happens really more and more, that some crops have some dramatic weather events, or too much rain or not enough. And this is a direct event of climate change. And we see how roasters don't have to face a dilemma of, do I continue to buy from this producer because that's also my values, to have long-term relationship with so-and-so producer, with such and such producers, or do I lower my standard because it's also my values to provide excellent coffee to my customer, to the coffee shop. So I think it can also really act as a way to reconcile those dilemma, basically.
Yeah, it's super interesting to hear you kind of talk on both sides, like do roasters add more value or make different buying decisions based on the feedback of the green itself. And then, once you start sorting out issues in the green, especially in roasted, you see a Quaker, like you open, a bag of coffee and you see some Quakers in there, it really kind of like irks you. It's like, hey team, you can remove these and improve the cup quality. You can improve so much through just something so simple as getting rid of Quakers. So uh, we love the pearls. We recommend them to any roastery. We've had, I don't know how many showings through here. Yeah, people should definitely get them and use Dave 10 at check. No. Uh, okay, let's transition to, you guys have a few new products. The silo just came out in the last 12 months, I guess, and you got the bagging machine. Maybe talk about the arc of how you guys designed that. Why continue to focus on the roastery? Love to hear about that.
Sure. So from the beginning, the idea was to offer equipment for specialty coffee roasters. Usually we would be operating 12 kilo to 90 kilo roaster. And this is important because this is basically the speed at which you want your equipment to operate, to keep up with the amount of coffee roasted in an hour. So this is the initial audience that we design our product for. And if you look how Sovda was started, you can really see a gap very easily. On one hand, you have artisan approach, almost a reaction to automation. You want to have the roaster and the human in the center of everything. And I don't know how it is in Canada, but in France, we tend to be a bit slow with change, and we really have this romantic figure of the roaster, like a baker or
Right.
something where everything is around the knowledge of the artisan. And then on the other end, you have this manufacturer of equipment for any kind of industry. So corn, rice, tea, coffee, one of them, who would usually handle much, much bigger volume. And you have this gap in the middle where you don't have a lot of equipment manufacturer. So this is our initial target. From the beginning, we wanted to have a full lineup. So we started with the Pearl Mini, had a conveyor that evolved now into this lift with this toner, which is a very simple product, right? It's a conveyor, but in this case, it also takes stone out, which if you look at roastery workflow, is a really great invention. It is one step less. It takes less footprint. And a lot of the roasteries, a lot of our clients, they have a lot of space constraint. So that was the second product that we designed, this lift with this toner. Then we continued down the line with a packing machine, which have an interesting system that we didn't invent out of scratch because it was very used in bigger bagging machine, more for corn or whatnot. But this was our first packing machine. It was the precision feel. Roaster loved it, but they told us that in many cases it's too big for their space, and also having to buy systematically a conveyor. It's a good idea, but was just too pricey. So we came up mainly listening to all those feedback, and internally also there was my colleague Niklas who was telling us that if we launch it, it would be really a success, and he was the advocate for it. And we launched it, and and it was a success. So this was for the packing, and now since 2024, we have launched two products. One is the silo that Rosso is using since a few weeks. And this silo is for green and roasted. And where it probably makes the most sense is for roasteries doing blend post-roast. And the idea is once you have the green bean in the silo, you don't touch the coffee until it's out of your roasters. Ideally, you don't touch it later down neither because you have some other conveyor. But this is to automate the part of scooping the green coffee and portioning it into your roasters. And it's interesting because it's still one of the steps that is very manual. So when you look at the roastery, you can see certain steps are very early on automated. That's probably the packing, and then come the lifting. Color sorting is a bit different because there are not so many roasteries who do it systematically by hand. So it's an upgrade more than an automatization. And then I think the next one, you have the blending, who is also still quite laborious, even if people come with methodology and tricks and strong people to do it faster, but it's usually not very automated. And the silo, which if you go to commercial roasters, of course, it will be more automated, but it's impressive how with this automation, it's not twice faster. It's much faster, and it's also much less labor on the operator, who is usually the roaster, who is usually preparing everything between roasts. So in a way, it's almost impacting how you roast.
And how many roasters across the world would have Sovda in their facilities?
It's a good question. It's between 350 and 400.
Wow.
And this is from someone who have just a lift to someone who has two color sorter and a silo, like Rosso, basically. But so this is all the clients. And then we start to be less and less only color sorter company and more a workflow company. But it's interesting that we really still have this diversity of clients. Some clients, they know they want to lift with this toner, and it's the first thing they're gonna automate in their roastery, and it's a big deal. And some other client, they just show us the layout of their building, and they let us design a full roastery for them. So we still have both client and both give us great insight actually into what to continue to develop here. So another product we developed last year and it's fully launched. We have something around 10 clients at the moment for it. Is a blender with it's not an innovation in terms of product, because it's literally a cooling tray that you isolate from your roaster, and then you add some conveying system, some sensors, and a simple user interface. But it's a big innovation in terms of workflow, because people really don't have to touch the coffee multiple times. Once it's dropped into this conveyor, it goes and is directly blend, and then it drops, and ideally it goes to the next step, which is directly packed. So this is interesting, I think, when you think in terms of how to optimize your roastery, is you can talk a lot about where you will position the machines and save a few steps. How far you're gonna walk between the machines and things like that. But usually the single thing that will optimize the workflow in the sense less labor intensive task and less time to get to the same output, I think is really this idea of being able to have all the machine being connected to each other with conveyor and not having to handle those brood beans around the roastery.
You're talking about us, right?
I haven't been to your roastery.
We have the 200 brew bins,
but I think it's really, and of course, then you can have constraint and trade-off because perhaps you want to degas and things like that. And that's actually where silos for roasted coffee, which really is again the norm for commercial or large specialty coffee roastery, can come. But if you spend time in a roastery and you look at those operation, you have the whole thing of handling the brood bean, which you can time someone doing it, and but you have also all this headspace, and you look at how we try to optimize our workflow, not in a roastery, but as a laptop worker, and we have all these tools, how they integrated, and so you don't have to do this copy paste the data here and put it there. To me, the brood bean is a bit the same thing, because you really have to remember what coffee it is, and maybe you hesitate, and then maybe you ask your colleague. Perhaps you have a good system for it, but still then you need to manage this system with magnet and whatnot, where you write on the bean what it is. And to me, it's interesting. I was this morning at a local roastery with one of our clients in Brussels, and I took videos of the operation before they used us and after. And of course, you quickly forget, I think, how it was before.
Yeah.
And now it's just normal, and there's always something else to optimize. So now they're optimizing the new workflow for us. But it's interesting. Sometimes there is one change that then everything will change around it. But I think roasteries are often trying to find a way to improve that won't be too drastic. Because then perhaps you need to change how you take your order, because then you need to have a centralized system, and that's another department, and that's complicated to touch, and it brings chaos to other departments and whatnot. So you often find very small optimization on the margin, which at the end perhaps will never really bring much. Whereas I really believe in the end of the brood bean. I know it's a sensitive topic, because and I think you can even draw the parallel with the development of a company. Maybe the brood bean brought you somewhere, and it was fantastic to a certain extent, but maybe at some point it's not what you need to get to the next level, and you can't optimize something that is not adapted anymore.
No, you're talking about systems in the back, and trying to figure out optimization is fun and also difficult at the same time. Like we've gone through challenges. We've worked our workflow multiple times in the last 5 years, and adding different pieces of Sovda equipment help save time and mental energy that used to be like physical labor. We used to have group bins of greens sorted. We had 60 or 70 at one time. And so it's taking up all this floor space. The team has to physically move it. There's a lot of things that the silo has done, sorting. So yeah, the last step is getting it into our, sorry, we have a weigh-in fill, but optimizing, getting rid of those brutes and having it flow in. But then that changes the workflow, because you got to think of, okay, what roast are we doing? We got to do the same roast over and over to gain like optimal, bagging capacity and whatnot. Anyways, I want to talk we get, it's May 5th here. In North America, the talk has been tariffs. The damn
Oh,
tariff
really?
talk. Yeah, it's all inclusive. It's all anyone talks about. And you're manufacturing in China. How is that? How are you navigating tariffs? Does it even matter? I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about, you guys building there and having any issues around patents or strategies on that. Yeah, the floor is kind of yours on maybe both those topics.
Sure. So since 2018, Sovda has been manufacturing in China. Now we have software, mechanical, electrical engineer there. So for us, it is clear we will continue to manufacture in China for the near future at least. So now we have this tariff situation. The US is about, depending what period you look at, but we can say between a quarter and a third of our revenue. And now the tariff is 145%. So what do we do? So it is so new that for now we just have approached this situation more as an opportunity, really, rather than how do we fix the tariff, because clearly we can't do anything to fix the tariff ourselves. Unless if we talk about going into exotic way of importing, which we are not exploring. So what do we do? Our first reaction, we want to continue to make business in the US, so we simply absorb a lot of the cost and accept to have a much smaller margin. And then the other thing that we do is we are going to develop much more those other markets which were always there, and we always knew we were underperforming. But hey, we're human, we go where it's easy or obvious. So for us, Australia, Korea, and Japan are a little bit a reaction to the tariff, and perhaps it will work out, perhaps not, but at least this is how we get energized almost by this tariff situation at the moment. And we will see in the next months what stays, what changed. But for now, this is our posture. So continuing to do business in the US by absorbing the majority almost of the increase, and then being much more intentional, and also we can be much more aggressive in those markets if we compare it with the US, where the margin would be much smaller. So it's also put things in perspective for us.
Yeah, it's a challenging time, but when there's challenges, there's opportunities, and it sounds like you guys got a good strategy, and hopefully in 2 months the tariff talk will all go away and we're back to where we began. But I'm not going to predict that. I don't think you want to predict that, but
yeah, or not. And I think yeah, for us, the first big crisis that we have, and it wasn't just for us, it was COVID, where it was interesting timing for us, because it was at this moment where I moved temporarily to the US for a few months to open a roastery, open an office, hire more people than we have ever hired. And then all this happened. And I think the quick lesson perhaps is just to quickly acknowledge how bad it is, and find ways to fix the situation, but more importantly, find ways to get energy out of it and
Yep.
develop other things that can work in this new environment. Because the worst is the what if, the getting stuck. Because here again, you will always find an audience. So in our case, roasters who don't want to be too crushed by it, and you need to be followed by the bank or whatnot. There are some very concrete things. I'm not saying it's just a mindset things, but I remember we would have a few clients who would really buy in this period. And when bringing up COVID, they were again almost finding a sense of pride or identity to say, yeah, I know this is happening, but I want to continue to move forward. So I think it's a little bit the same thing, this tariff at a much more localized level. We are manufacturing in China and making most of our revenue in the US, so it impacts us, but doesn't impact everyone. Yeah.
No, I love that that long-term thinking, and just keep going, get the energy, get to action. You can't change the tariff, so it's like, okay, what do we got to do to keep going?
Right.
Let's what's next for Sovda? You guys got any new products, or what's the next 2 to 5 years look like? That might be that might be too big of a timeline, but what's going on for you and Sovda over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think at this time, I'll change it. I think for now, what we are doing is we are trying to mature as a company. So until relatively recently, it was always go, go, go. And getting more excited perhaps by what's next and how can we improve what's already there. And doesn't mean we won't continue to innovate, but I think we're gonna spend a lot of resource and time into improving what's existing. And this can mean through better software. It can mean by doing small incremental changes to what's existing on the machine, and that we were always thinking that's good enough. But then if you actually listen to your client with the intention to take into account the feedback and not compare it with other priorities or more exciting things, what they say actually does make sense. So I think there's a lot of that. And then, yeah, big and never-ending topic, I think, is really the team. So we have some of the people who have been here from the beginning, but a lot of them also, of course, who have joined later. And to see how everyone is also evolving within the company, because most of us, I think now most of the team is under 32. So for a lot of people, they are really evolving within the company, taking more responsibility, growing in it. So yeah, we will continue to expand the team. The people within the team will continue to grow. We are also much more present now in China with really a lot of the development and engineering. So I think the main thing is really the maturation of the company, of the team. Yeah.
Well, we've seen it. We've, I guess, worked with you guys since 2021,
I
and the
have this in mind.
company's
Yeah.
yeah, and the company's grown. The products have been amazing. The support's been amazing. We just really value the relationship, and you guys are making great products. So we'll continue to support you guys and love everything you're doing. So, Max, where can people find you online? Where can they find Sovda? Give all your social details. I know you're a big social media guy.
Me? So for Sovda, it would be sovdacoffee.com. And then the Instagram is also very active. It's Sovda Coffee. And then for me, I'm big fan of LinkedIn. So Maxime
Nice.
Boegler, Boegler. And I'm not very active on Instagram, so I would rather go there.
Sweet. Yeah, buddy, we really appreciate hearing the story. It's fascinating to hear the behind the scenes of growing your company, and looking forward to the next 5 to 10 years, seeing where Sovda goes.
Well, it was great to share, and I'm looking forward to listen to the episode to see what you extract out of this. Thanks a lot, Dave.
Yeah, we appreciate it, buddy. Yeah, man, we'll chat soon.